Yup, and welcome to another video on this channel. Yes, the most frequent uploading channel I know. I kind of stole that gag from Crispy Pope, but oh well. But yeah, we're back with another video. Again, sorry for sort of not having a video last week. I was doing DV, I was shattered, so yeah. But today, instead of doing a review or a ranking, I've decided I'm going to be doing a discussion topic, another thing that I kind of stole from Crispy Pro, but what the world does not know doesn't hurt them. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about a BBC show written by Russell T Davies, and you may have heard about this. I know a lot of Whovians have been watching this, most notably Mr. Ace Creeper, which brings me to one bit of information that I should have said a long time ago. But thank you to all the new subscribers who subscribed because of the Ace Creeper video. It means a lot to me that you're here. I hope you enjoy the content here. I know it's not as professional as Ace Creeper or most other YouTubers. I mean, I'm literally sitting on the floor here with my iPhone 4 pointing at my face, next to sort of leaning against a pile of books on a sort of stool. But yeah, so this is really professional. So retro YouTube, I suppose. I guess we could say retro YouTube. But yeah, today I'm going to be talking about the HBO and BBC collaboration Years and Years, and most notably what Doctor Who, a show that means a lot to me, can learn from this show. And I say this because I don't hate Series 11. I mean, I wouldn't decorate my room with Series 11 sort of posters and wear Series 11 merch if I hated Series 11. I do not hate it. But I can't say definitively that I hate any Doctor Who season. There's always something I love. But I know, particularly recent years, Doctor Who has been making a lot of mistakes. And I think Years and Years is the perfect example. Not only is it sort of a letter written by Russell T Davies, sort of, in a way, to Chris Chibnall, and sort of saying, saying with a spoonful of sugar what Doctor Who is currently doing wrong. And I came up with a few points, and I'm going to discuss them here. If you have not seen Doctor Who or Years and Years, but most notably Series 11 is the series I'm going to be talking about the most here, of Doctor Who, then you could talk. Most people have seen it by now. But yeah, this will contain spoilers for that. And also the BBC series Years and Years. 6 episodes. There's a lot of content that I can talk about here. And I feel like if I tell you some of the spoilers, it's definitely going to ruin the series for you. So definitely make sure that you have seen Years and Years before watching any further. I'll give you a moment to click away while I sort of just, pause the video. Yeah, what can Doctor Who learn from Years and Years? Most notably, the structure of the series. And this is something that has been a problem with Doctor Who for a few years now. Is they tend to make a certain number of episodes. Some often fall flat on their face and don't need to exist. And also, something else that I think has also plagued Doctor Who in recent years is runtime. And this has been a big problem for Doctor Who, most notably since it returned, because of course, they had the opposite problem in the classic era. Their stories were often too long. But, so yeah. What I liked about Years and Years is it very much felt like an event, whereas Series 11, I got to halfway through the series and it started to grade on me. I started to feel like it was less it felt very much like an event at the start with this very cinematic style stories, but as the series went along, it felt less and less like an event. Whereas with Years and Years, every episode felt like an event. It felt like you were really part of something exciting and you had no idea where it was going to go. Whereas with Doctor Who, I can tell you that before watching an episode, or within watching the first 10 minutes, I could have told you how that entire episode planned out. But with Years and Years, you genuinely didn't know. There was that sense of mystery, which brings me on to my next point, which is story arcs. I think this was something very much missing from Doctor Who Series 11 that a lot of us missed, and particularly in the Whovian community. Particularly as they were made quite popular with Stephen Moffat Russell T Davies very much does a very Russell T Davies story arc, in the sense that the villain is sort of the arc, but you don't quite fully know the full scale of everything until you get to the end of the series. But yeah, that extra runtime, I think, and the less episodes means that you can spread out that story arc nicely over 6 episodes without it getting particularly tiresome, which I think a lot of people felt with like series 9. There was like hybrid every episode, and was like, yeah, this is getting a bit boring now, can we just find out what the hybrid is? And then we never found out what the hybrid was, which was a bit annoying. But yeah, so less episodes would definitely makes the story arc feel more condensed and makes it not grade on you. So you don't feel like you're just getting annoyed at the fact that you don't know what the conclusion of it is. And of course, the longer runtime can allow the story to properly develop. Like you can have the start, the second act, and the final act. The final act is often rushed in New Who episodes of Doctor Who, and in television in general, which is why these mini-series, in my opinion, stand out quite well, is because they usually are given sort of cinematic treatment, as in if you watch them all in order, they could sort of double act as a movie, in a sense, like a 6-hour long movie, and that's definitely how Years and Years felt to me. It certainly had the budget of, it sort of felt like it had the budget of a 6-hour movie, and that was the feel that I irradiated from the show for me personally. So longer run times can make the entire, particularly if they went with a story arc, can make the series feel like a 6-hour long movie, which is, I know the kind of approach they were trying to go with Series 11 was to have each episode feel like a movie, but I don't think that has ever worked for Doctor Who in the past, mainly because of that runtime issue, meaning that they can never fully achieve that cinematic potential that I know Doctor Who has, because they've produced such 3 brilliant Doctor Who movies. Well, they're not brilliant, they've all got flaws, but nothing's perfect in the Doctor Who universe. There are very few perfect episodes or stories. But yeah, that runtime can really help. That feels cinematic. It feel more like it's worth your time, which I'm afraid Series 11 at the end did not feel like it was worth my time. But yeah, so the runtime could definitely help with that, along with the story arc as well. Another thing that I think worked really well in Years and Years that's been missing from Doctor Who for quite a while, some would argue all the way back to the 70s. Obviously there have been some great stories with this theme in New Who and past that 70s point, but there haven't really been any great ones. And Years and Years gives us a great story about the horrors of mankind. Most notably, it's really prophetic. You can tell that Russell T Davies understands the political climate that we're in the year 2019, and how if we don't do something, or if we don't act, or choose our actions wisely, the future that we can live in, and a future that seems frighteningly realistic, is one of the reasons why Years and Years has been so good. It's how prophetic it is, and how it seems like every move seems incredibly like it could come true. Like Vivian Rook feels very much like a politician that we could very much get today. A politician that has no real policy. Something I definitely felt from recent political candidates for the leader of the Conservative Party. I was often left feeling that some of them didn't have any policies. Most notably Rory Stewart. I went to see him actually at a political rally, and I very much got Vivian Rook sort of vibes from him actually, and how he was definitely trying to appeal to the public more than actual politicians. But I do think that Vivian Rook and Rory Stewart have a lot in common actually. But yeah, the fact that his words seemed quite empty, and how he says he's going to do all these great things but not focusing on actual issues, very much seems. I'm very glad that, because as of filming this, he's been eliminated, and I felt like that was definitely sort of a sort of Vivian Rook moment. So the horrors of mankind and what we can do, so like the self-checkout moment, that was an incredibly powerful moment, because particularly as me, I've always grown up with self-checkouts. I've never not had self-checkouts. It's kind of weird to imagine a world where there isn't self-checkouts. I've never had to physically look at a checkout lady in the eyes before. in my, I mean, I never looked you guys in the eyes, but it's just a weird sort of thing to think how that could be how our future turns out. And it's very much something Russell T Davies has been good at, particularly with episodes like Turn Left, where it's sort of focused on Donna's sort of life. And I got a lot of Turn Left vibes from Years and Years, actually. Except Years and Years is on a wider scale. What humankind as a whole, the decisions that led to that future, which was obviously horrific. I mean, it was dreadful, like, to imagine that being our future, how everything was all over the place, the government conspiracies everywhere. I think that's something Doctor Who could do very well, and it did feel very Doctor Who-y. In fact, Russell T Davies has straight up admitted that this was going to be that Years and Years is going to be the ending of Torchwood. Not only can I see that very well, I think it really makes sense, and I think it's a very Doctor Who-y thing, and I feel like Doctor Who really needs something like Years and Years to combat people's opinions, maybe say, oh, we can still do stuff like that. And the thing with Years and Years, it felt fresh and new, even though the concept is a bit used, I suppose, at this point, the sort of dystopian thing. It made it feel fresh. And I don't think that's something Doctor Who can do at this point. It very much feels stale and sort of used, and sort of like an old toy that the BBC has just chucked on the playground, like the selfish company that it is. It clearly does not value the people that buy the licence at all at this point. I think very much, particularly with the licence fee sort of things, I think that was very interesting how that developed with the over 75s and the pension credit card thing. I thought that was very interesting how that developed, and how the BBC is becoming less and less respectful of its viewers by the day, in my opinion. But yeah, the horrors of mankind. I mean, just think of what Doctor Who can do with that. It's all about teaching. Like, Sidney Newman founded it on that it should teach people a lesson. That doesn't have to be a historical lesson or a science fiction lesson. I think there's definitely an element of teaching a moral message that should be in Doctor Who. I think it's something that's very much missing from Doctor Who that I think would work very well, particularly with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. She seems to be the kind of Doctor that's pointing out when people are wrong and when they are making mistakes and what they need to improve. And I think that's definitely something that would maybe define Jodie Whittaker's Doctor if they did it right, which I think, if they followed Years and Years' example, could be a very good thing for the show, in particular. Another thing I felt Years and Years got very right was representation, and how, particularly with Series 11, representation very much felt forced, and that's part of the reasons why it started to grate on me in the end, because I felt like they were just doing it for the sake of having representation, to put it in the public's eye. Oh, we were doing it from the very beginning. We were all good, you know. I think it was very disappointing, particularly with Series 11, after coming hot off the heels of some of the best representation for Doctor Who in its entire history with Bill Potts. I've talked about Bill Potts and how she's an amazing character on this channel before. And I very much got Bill Potts vibes in terms of storytelling and positive representation from the relationship between Danny Lyons, and Victor. That relationship and how that drove the plot, particularly halfway through the series, in that plot where he's desperate to get Victor back into the country. I think that was one of the most powerful love stories I've ever seen on TV, and probably one of the best LGBT relationships I've ever seen on TV. I think the way it's executed was so good, and I think you could only ever have a writer like Russell T Davies write a relationship like that. It works so well. You could tell. I know it was sort of, you know, particularly I felt like he actually loved him. I thought the chemistry between those two actors was incredible. I totally believed them, that was real. Particularly, there was a scene at the end of one of the episodes when Danny dies, and Victor is left there, and he goes back to Danny's house, to his, like, sort of flat, I think it's a little hat, and he calls everyone, and that moment, the deafening silence before they all come over, and the end of that episode, oh gosh, it packs some of the most emotion packed ending in an episode since I think Rose died. I think it's definitely one of Russell T Davies's best sort of episode endings of that series. That and the first episode's ending, oh my god. That first episode had me reeling. I was really like, I need more of this right now. So yeah, representation, particularly those two characters, I've really believed them. Another concept of representation that I really liked, and again, it's core to the story. Like the relationship between Danny and Victor was core to the story, and the after effects of Danny's death sends ripples across the end of the series, and how everyone's desperate to help Victor because they love him and they believe that he's part of his family, and I think that part of their family. I think that's incredible that they were able to build that relationship over just 6 episodes. Chris Chibnall, pay attention. If you're watching this, I can't believe, like, watch Years and Years. You have to watch Years and Years, Chris Chibnall, I swear. If you haven't, I'm gonna, like, you know, lose it. That, to get that emotional potency from, I think he died episode 4. I think it was episode 4. He'd only been on TV, that character, Daniel Lyons, for 4 hours. Yet I felt so much of an emotional connection to him that I was on the verge of tears at his death. In fact, I probably was crying. I'm going to admit it. I was crying. To get that kind of emotional connection in a way that I didn't necessarily feel when Clara died from Doctor Who is so unique to this show. That's one of the things I love about miniseries is they don't have to think about future series. I hope they don't make a second series of Years and Years. Not because I don't want a second series, I do, but because I want this to stand by itself. Sorry, that's my tablet. It's just telling me I've got notifications. That it can stand alone from all other dramas, and it can just be there and exist, and it's incredible. But yeah, that relationship, how Chris Chibnall, he kills off a character or something, I don't know. I feel no emotional connection to that character. I think the only time I felt any kind of emotion whilst watching Doctor Who Series 11 was when Rosa Parks stood up at the end of episode 3. I've talked about how much I love Rosa. It's such a great episode. It's probably the crown jewel of Chris Chibnall's era. But that representation and the fact that I could feel that emotion in a way that I've never felt for a lot of characters on TV is incredible. The other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of representation in Years and Years and how Doctor Who has often got it wrong is Doctor Who, I said before, Doctor Who often just introduces a character just to make a political point, to prove that we were doing good all along. It strikes me as a very J.K. Rowling thing to do. J.K. Rowling has often come out and just said certain characters were gay, or there were certain types of characters in Doctor Who, in Harry Potter universe that were, you know, of certain ethnic backgrounds, or, you know, and she's come out and said, "Oh, I was doing it all along." That's something that annoys me. That she's just trying to hop on the bandwagon, and it's not good. It's just trying to show off, really. But telling honest representation stories can be done very well, and Years definitely proves that. Particularly with the transhuman thing, and how poetic was the ending when Edith Lyons becomes a transhuman at the end of that. And that speech about love, again, in tears. It was incredible. That what she was becoming was love. And how love was a strong theme in this show, and it's something I think Doctor Who needs to work on more. It's been a very powerful thing in Doctor Who before, that powerful emotion, and I've never felt it in Doctor Who in that way before, and I really felt, hang on, that's really strange that you would think that was something that would occur in Doctor Who. Like, Jodie Whittaker talks about hope, but she rarely talks about love, and we never have that sort of emotional connection to any of the characters, you know. But yeah, the transhuman thing is incredible. The way that they start off by telling this story and introducing this concept with that girl who was going through the issues and really wanting to upload herself and wanted to live forever is a common struggle. Everyone's afraid of dying. Everyone wants to get the latest upgrade. I'm talking about this into an iPhone 4. But yeah, everyone wants the latest upgrade, and it's incredible in this society that would happen. And it seems like it's much like the Cybermen. It seems like something that would happen, where we would upgrade ourselves to the point where we would just be nothing but data, but information. It's an incredible concept, and it really speaks about other transgender concepts as well. It's incredible the way they tell that story. But yeah, and now I'm going to move on to another point. So another thing, talking about the emotional connection that I felt between characters, it's something that I was not able to feel with other characters in Doctor Who Series 11. Particularly given that we had a larger ensemble cast of companions. Something that really confused me was the fact that in Years and Years, with an even larger ensemble of cast, about 10 or so characters I would say, how they were able to achieve that emotional connection better than any of the characters in Doctor Who Series 11 incredibly baffles me. Like, I felt nothing for Yaz. I felt nothing for Ryan. I felt nothing really for Graham. I certainly didn't feel anything for the 13th Doctor by the end of the series. It's that emotional character development and the journey that you go on with these characters. And I think Years and Years incredibly well developed those characters and made me feel an emotional connection for all of them. For Edith and her struggles as a protester and the sacrifices she makes for her family and for freedom and for what she believes is right is incredibly moving, and the path that it leads her to is incredibly tear-jerky, particularly that speech I spoke about, the speech about how she's becoming love in the transhuman thing. That was incredible. That was incredibly moving and powerful. I suppose Uriel, the emotional connection I felt to her and her struggles when trying to hold on to bits of the past and to try and stop the world from developing in the way that it is and to hold on to what she believes is right and to inspire those around her to do what is right. She gives her full attention to her children, to her family. She's willing to give them a home. She's willing to give them a roof and food. She's willing to do anything for them, which is incredibly moving as a character, particularly given her struggles as a character. Particularly as she's in advanced years. I was surprised she was alive by the end of it, I'm not going to lie. But she made me feel an emotional connection, particularly with her speech at the start of the final episode, where she's talking about the cashiers. I've talked about it a bit already. She talks about the electronic cashiers and the cashier ladies. And that was incredibly powerful. The fact that we aren't doing anything, we aren't doing enough. And right now, I think Russell T Davies is very much trying to push that message that we need to do more. And I very much agree with him. I think there's a lot we need to do in terms of preventing the future that is very possible with Years and Years, actually. Very possible. So yeah. So all the characters I felt really well developed, particularly like characters like Victor. I very much felt for him at the end of the series, and Edith in particular. I think Edith and Victor were definitely highlights. Rosie and her kids, her family, and her relationship with Edith was another highlight. Fran was very funny, and how she's still desperate to help though. She's willing to sacrifice her reputation for her friends and and the people around her. No matter what, she's willing to do it for them. She's willing to put her life on the line to get out her words. I think that's why she definitely goes very well with Edith. And the characters all around them, like the kids, like Celeste and Stephen, their relationship and how it progresses, how it goes down and up again, and how he becomes what he fears most. And the journey that Stephen Lyons goes on is incredible. He has these moments where he's in the right place, he's trying to do the right thing, even though he's working for the bad guys. He still wants to do the right thing, particularly with the erstwhile camps, when he sends Victor over to the erstwhile camps. Is an incredibly moving moment, particularly when his daughter is the one that finds out, and how his daughter is in a way ashamed of him, and how his family becomes ashamed of him. But despite that, they can come together and love each other again and move on for what they believe is right, and how to move past the past and to look to the future, which is something I think a lot of families need. I think the Lyons family is a great role model because they really do understand, I think, each other very much. Another thing that I thought very well worked in Years and Years is the villain. The villain with this is very interesting because Emma Thompson gives not only one of the best performances, in my opinion, of her career, but with this, it's the way that she's written into the story that's interesting. She's written in as a politician. She rises to power and eventually becomes PM and starts manipulating, as you'd expect, things behind the scenes, as a lot of people would have expected. But the way she does it, she's an incredibly manipulative figure, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah, so I loved that, and the fact that she didn't appear that much in the series. Like you often just got a couple of cameos for it, obviously because Emma Thompson is a heck of a lot of money probably to get in a show, particularly like Years and Years, which is a small BBC show. At the end of the day, I know it only attracted a couple of million views, which really surprised me. I would have thought it would have become more mainstream, but no. But the fact that her cameos, but she still had an incredibly immense. She cast a very large shadow across the series, and how her presence was felt even though she wasn't there, which was such an incredible performance. The fact that Emma Thompson was able to irradiate that kind of performance from such a small role. I think there was only one big scene with her in, but you did feel that she was there and what she was doing was causing consequences for the characters. Yeah. And she terrified me more than any of the villains. A lot of the villains on Doctor Who, particularly Tim Shaw, where they were very keen to show he's big and he's bad. But with Vivian Rook, I think she was very much a flawed politician, and how she was controlling and manipulative. But with Tim Shaw, he was just like big, bulky, muscly monster, and that's, I think, something with Doctor Who that's often the case. It's always just a big monster, but there's no emotional sort of connection to it. Like, you don't feel like there's something deeper going on. Like with Vivian Rook, you did. I think there's something very did try and did quite well with the Master, particularly in series 3 finale, that 3-part bit. But it didn't have the same impact that Vivian Rook did. I think it's partly down to how realistic that kind of politician is, and how we have some politicians like Vivian Rook already in the world. I mean, just look at it. There's very clearly some politicians who are doing some shady business behind the scenes. And how scary it is that almost, I think it would be incredibly surprising if a politician did not come up like Vivian Rook. I said it with Rory Stewart. He is a lot like Vivian Rook in more ways than I think he'd like to admit. But yeah, sometimes with villains, less is more. Having that presence at the end of the day can be more scary than him physically being there. Like the Ting or Tim Shaw, just like showing up, but it's like showing a scary face. Just because you've got fangs doesn't mean you're scary. Just because you've got fangs, I guess, that doesn't make you ferocious. I don't know. Try to think of a creepy, cool phrase for that, but it didn't really work. But yeah, so sometimes with villains, less is more. And that was definitely the case with Vivian Rook. And I think the thing with Doctor Who villains isn't the past. They can build up to a big showdown. I did feel like they were building up to a big showdown with Vivian Rook. But in some ways, I'm glad they ended it with the erstwhile sites and how that was the big consequence and the downfall of Vivian Rook than a natural showdown with her was. I think that is more impactful than a big showdown with a villain at the end of the series. I think that worked much better in their favour, and I think we should have more stories like that in Doctor Who. Perhaps where it's the consequences of the actions of that villain that brings about that villain's downfall. I think that would definitely be an incredibly cool concept that they could use in future series of Doctor Who. And one final thing I wanted to bring about is not really related to Years and Years, but this came up quite recently. Because of an upcoming Disney film that's coming out. Yeah, I know Disney a lot. I do talk about it quite a bit. And this Disney film that's upcoming is Toy Story 4. Now, I know you're thinking they're making another Toy Story movie? I mean, like, I thought those movies were done, and to be fair, I did too. I'm yet to see Toy Story 4. I don't know if I will see Toy Story 4. But a story that's very much popping up to me in particular is the fact that it's taken them so long to make a Toy Story 4. I believe the last Toy Story movie was 2011, I believe, or it might have been 2010. That was Toy Story 3, that was 8 or 9 years ago. And before that, the Toy Story movies were a bit closer together. And something that someone pointed out to me is that Pixar will only make a movie if they believe their story is good enough. They believe that the story has to come first, and then the rest of it will follow. This is something I think they really need to think about with Doctor Who. It's with Doctor Who, it often feels just like a money grab. It doesn't feel like it's necessary to telling a wider narrative or telling a good story, particularly with Series 11. It felt like they were just cashing in on something that's popular at the moment, or they've seen that something is profitable. And I think there's a running theme in Doctor Who Series 11, I think. What they need to do is think of a story. And I think I got the kind of vibe from Years and Years. I feel like Years and Years probably wouldn't have been told if the story hadn't come first. I think that is what Doctor Who, pretty much anything, any show or film needs to follow in general. Do not make that movie unless your story is well thought out and if there's a point to making your film. If your story is no good, do not make that story or film, that show or whatever. You do not need to produce a series every year. I think Game of Thrones, they didn't produce a series every year. Sherlock, in particular, did not produce a series every year. They only, very much like Toy Story, they only produced it when they had a decent story to tell. There's only been 4 seasons of Sherlock. I think that's the thing with Years and Years. I don't think we will get a second season. And I'm glad that I believe that, because it means that series has ended on a definite note. In some ways, a series of Doctor Who should be a self-contained story. I believe that the serialised type of storytelling for Doctor Who has often worked better, particularly with Torchwood, Miracle Day, and Children of Earth. That sort of serialised series, I think, should become a BBC mainstay, because it's some of the best drama they've ever produced. I think my 2 favourite BBC series is, I'm going to say it, Years and Years is probably better than anything Doctor Who has produced over its 55-year run. I know I'm going to get massacred for that, but it's just that good. I think it's very much up there with Torchwood Series 3, which again is quite a bit better than a lot of what Doctor Who's produced in its 55-year run. I think it's partially down to the fact that it has run on that long. I think, particularly with Doctor Who's case, it now needs to focus less on producing a series every year. And in order to stay in the public's mind and not becoming, that thing again, it needs to become an event. And Doctor Who needs to become an event for it to survive in this streaming world where you can just binge watch a series of Killing Eve. I've watched Killing Eve, it's a great show, by the way. You can just binge that entire series. And that, again, feels very much like a sort of 8-hour-long movie. So yeah, that's something Doctor Who needs to consider in the future. Maybe just making one story, like a Netflix series or something, like a long 6-hour movie. I think all of this criteria is something Doctor Who needs to consider going forward with future series. And I do commend Russell T Davies for making this series. It's by far some of the best TV I've seen in years. And I hope that when the BAFTAs come round, I hope that you are nominated for Best TV Show and a lot of the other awards. There's some great performances there. And an intense score. I hope you win something for that score, Murray Gold. You've very much proven all the people who are saying, Murray Gold was running out of steam. You were not. You just pulled out all the triggers in one go with this show. That end title, the sort of end credit sort of music is incredibly daunting and sort of spooky and exciting all at the same time, and the way that it always ends the episode, except the last one, is incredibly good. The fact that each episode ended with a cliffhanger is another thing. That Doctor Who Series 11 was missing cliffhangers. It really bugged me. They really need to sort of introduce cliffhangers. The character thing I wanted to talk about again, because I think there was a relationship between Graham and Ryan, and that was supposed to be the big character thing. I didn't really get any emotion from that personally. I didn't get any emotion from Grace's death because those characters weren't well developed. I meant to bring that up earlier. I've just remembered it. But yeah, so I hope Doctor Who takes this into consideration, particularly with Series 12. I know it's still in development. You guys can get the message out, so share it if you want to. Please share. You can like, comment, subscribe. I wish Russell T Davies, I hope that you deserve all the praise you get for this show. It's an incredibly monumentous achievement and truly the crown jewel in your very, very pretty crown. I'm sure you have a very nice jewel set of different shows that you have made, including Doctor Who Series 4, Torchwood Series 3, and now this. I think are very much your crown jewels, and definitely your claim to fame. But yes, thank you for watching. I hope you have liked this video, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day, and goodbye.